All right, the way these videos are going to work, I'm going to be doing one lesson, one module at a time here so that you can see the changes based on the engine version that we're using versus what's inside of the documentation. And it's also just another way that you can follow along and do this sort of activity, right? So we can follow along. Our first lesson is on inclined planes. So this is lesson 1 for our Rube Goldberg. And again, this is just a fun activity or a fun project that will teach us about how to use our engine. So in this lesson, we'll be in our kitchen. This is what they're going to continuously call the gameplay area. We're going to look at inclined planes to move and change the trajectory of a ball that spawns in. And we're going to talk about enabling physics on our static meshes. We're going to talk about various aspects of our engine, from our content drawer to our outliner and a couple of other windows that we don't have open yet. So we're going to take a look at that. And luckily, we don't need to do anything with this one-time setup. We've already opened our project. We've already associated it. I do have the navigation cheat sheet for you, which we used last class to get familiar with the engine. So the first thing that they're asking us to do is open up our levels panel. So we're going to come up here to the top left where it says window. I'm going to open the levels menu. I'm going to nest it. I'm going to drag it like a browser tab. I'm going to put it next to my outliner. And let me actually make this a little bit bigger too so that we can see it all the way. And what they want us to do here is basically they've set up a bunch of levels for us to do our work in with some pre-setup stuff. And so we're going to toggle on the visibility of level 1 incline. And then we're also going to right click this and we are going to make it our current. If we don't make it our current, this bottom little pop-up down here that says current level won't change, and we won't be placing our objects inside of this level. And when we go to the next level and we toggle it off, your objects are going to still show up. So we got to really make sure that we are toggling it as current. And we're going to right click again, and we're going to change our streaming method from blueprint to always loaded. And what that's doing is it's setting up all of our objects in this scene so that when we hit play, they actually stay loaded and they begin to work. So now that we can see, we've got a spawner here in the middle. We've got a handful of buckets around our kitchen area. And our first challenge is going to be to utilize our inclined plane. So we're going to first hit play and see what happens. We'll see a ball has spawned from our spawner, but it doesn't go anywhere. And so our job is to get that ball into each of these 3 buckets. And if we hit escape, that takes us out of our gameplay so that we can edit again. And our goal is to roll that ball into bucket A first. And so we're going to utilize our inclined plane that they give us. So we're going to head to our content drawer. We are going to go into our geometry scripts. And inside of our geometry scripts, we have an inclined plane. So I can click and drag it. And we'll see that as I click and drag it into the scene, we can line it up with the trajectory of our spawner. And you'll notice when I drag it, it's kind of clicking around, and it's not quite clicking around how I want it to, if I wanted to line it up centered. And so I'm going to come up here underneath some of my items up at the top. I'm going to turn off those snapping options just briefly so that I can line it up how I want to. I'm going to keep my rotation snapping and my scaling snapping for now. I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees, drag it back over into place so that it's somewhat centered. And now we can see what happens when we hit play. So we hit the cheese, but we fell off. It didn't go where we wanted it to. So we're going to continue down here. They do put a note in here. If you ever see actor placement warnings, you can just hit OK. It'll be fine. But now that I've moved away, I want to make sure my cheese is selected. I can press F, and that's going to frame it in my camera. That's what they're telling us here. And I can also press the end key, END, to snap my cheese to the floor. That way it is as flat as possible, right? And it's on the lowest surface that it can reach. Now we need to adjust our cheese wedge. And the way this wedge works is we actually have this size gizmo, this little blue diamond, that lets us change the height and how long and how wide our cheese is. So maybe I want a little bit of a thinner ramp, but I want a big ramp that takes me all the way down. Now that I've adjusted it by moving that gizmo around, I can hit play. And now my ball is rolling, and I've made it into bucket A. So if you didn't make it into bucket A, be sure to adjust that cheese wedge a little bit more. All right, now we're going to continue. So we've moved our cheese wedge around, made sure it's under the actor, hit play. We saw our ball make it into bucket A. So now we need to do this again and get it into bucket B. So we're going to adjust the slope, change our size of our wedge until we get the ball into bucket B. And I'm just going to leave that one for you guys to do because this is no different than what it's asking you here in the guide. Once you've made it into bucket B, you are tasked to then get it into bucket C. And you may use your move tool to move it around. With the incline plane in place, you can see if you can get it into bucket C. So we've covered a lot of things already pretty quickly here, but we've got a new activity to do. Now I need you to get it into the buckets using at least 2 inclined planes. So redirecting your force, utilizing a couple of those inclined planes. So you can drag in another one. Maybe you want to rotate it on its side so that the angle is bouncing our ball off in another direction. Oops, it's not even in place, but you get the idea there. You can get this in place and then see how we could redirect our ball to get to bucket C using 2 or more. And so that's your next challenge, is to redo this but with multiple wedges. All right, the next part of the guide just briefly talks about setting physics on our object. So we notice when we hit play and my ball hits the bucket, my bucket is as heavy as a ton of rocks, right? It's not moving around at all. So we can enable physics on these objects by selecting them. And then in the right-hand side, we've got our details panel. And if we search for physics, if we spell it correctly, we can simulate our physics. And when we hit play, now when the ball comes in, we should see a little bit of movement. We saw a little bit there. Maybe I want my mass to be less so that it moves around a lot more. So I can adjust that over in my details panel as well. Hit play, keep playing around, see how it goes. There we go. We see some good movement. Now it's a little bit more alive, and that helps our scene look a little bit better too. All right, and now we're going to get into the challenge for this section. So we can actually turn off the visibility on our inclined plane. We can right-click, turn our streaming mode back to blueprint. Actually, we got to save, Control-Shift-S to save everything. Then we can turn our streaming to blueprint and turn off our vision and open up our challenge 1. And so you'll see we've got a spawner up in the top right here. We are here. We've got our spawner above us and the bucket super far away. So our goal is going to be to get our ball into that bucket. And same things here on our level side. I'm right-clicking, making it current, right-clicking, changing my streaming method. And we can hit play, and we'll see that the ball just falls, but we need to get it over into the bucket. And again, that's just going through what's on our screen here. If we press the 7 key, they've actually set up some camera angles for us as well. So throughout the guides, you'll keep your eye on those, and they'll take you to a pretty good camera angle if you just press that key. And then their challenge is how many inclined planes can you use to get that ball into the bucket. And that's the first one. of this challenge. So I'll leave that one there. And then we'll come to this next one, which is our particle party. All right, hopefully you got that ball into the bucket because that's part of your screenshot. And now we are going to look at how we can create a particle system to celebrate that we got it into the bucket. So we're going to go into our content drawer. We are going to find our way to the emitters folder. And I know I've got stuff here in the middle of my screen, but I'm just going to right click in an open area. And we are going to create a particle system, what they call a Niagara system. And so they have that already right here. In this menu, when we right click, we can create a new Niagara system. And for our sake, let's create a directional burst. And we're going to do this as an emitter. Let me double check that's what we want to be doing here. All right, I kind of like. We're going to do a radial burst. So I'm going to scroll down. You could search for it too, radial. And we're going to create a radial burst system. And I'm going to call mine, I'm just going to call my confetti. Just following the guide here. Once you've named it, you're going to double click it. You might not be able to see that behind my screen, but hopefully you get the idea. You're double clicking in. It's going to open up this menu where we can see our Niagara particle system. And again, it popped out in a separate screen like this. If I grab that tab, I can nest it up here next to my level, and now I've got it kind of like my browser windows. So on the left-hand side, we have our viewport, so we can see that. We can do all the same kind of navigation that we can do in our engine scene in this. We can rotate, we can pan, we can zoom, things like that. But what we really care about are these three boxes. We have 3 emitters as a part of this Niagara system. And so we've got the ability to toggle these on and off. So you can see what that omnidirectional burst does versus what the ribbon trails are and the followers. And you can see what these are doing. Now we want to make sure that they are all on. And what we're going to do is we're going to add some color. So in my omnidirectional burst, under my particle spawn, I'm going to hit this green plus button, and I'm going to search for color. Now I have access to this color variable, and I can make my particles start to be blue. And it's a little hard to see when we just do this first one, but as you see when I zoom in, we can start to see that coming through. And we can do that for these other 2 as well. Start making our confetti a little bit more fun. So maybe I have some red trail leaders, and maybe I want a blue trail follower, right? And so now we can start to see our kind of firework coming together here as our system is created. I'm going to scroll down. Again, this is where it starts to vary a little bit from what you're seeing in the documentation. They've updated these systems over the time that the engine has continued to update. And so we're just doing the same steps in a slightly different way. And so now that our emitter is set up, we've got color on it. I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to make sure it stays compiled. And then I can close this tab. We're done with it. So we are going to come back, and we're actually going to set up a collision box that spawns this emitter when our ball gets into the bucket. So I'm going to come back to my emitter in my content drawer. I'm going to right click, and we're going to create a blueprint class. From here, we have a few options. We just are going to create an actor for this one. And I'm going to call this BP underscore confetti so that I can start to bring my confetti Niagara system into my blueprint space here. Again, we're going to double click. It might pop out in a separate window. I suggest that you nest it. It just helps keep it organized. And then the first thing that we're going to do over here in the components tab on the left-hand side is we're going to hit add. And we're going to get a box collision. So I'm just type in box. I'll get a box collision. And now we can see this wireframe for where that collision is going to exist. With the components in our actor blueprint, now we can start to create our code. So if we go to the tab that says Event Graph, we'll see a few things in here. We've got an event begin play, an event actor begin overlap, and an event tick. The only one that we are going to use is our actor begin play, or actor begin overlap, excuse me. And so from here, we are going to drag off of our white arrow pin here, and we're going to search for spawn system at location. It's going to give us this big node here, and we've got a few things that we need to fill in. First, we need to tell it what system we're spawning. And so in this first case, we're going to spawn our confetti. The second thing that we need to do is we need to tell it where this is going to spawn. So I'm going to drag off of that location tab, and I'm going to get actor location. And you'll notice this says that our target is self, so this blueprint is self. And so wherever this blueprint is the location that this system is going to spawn. With that, we can compile and we can save. And then we can bring that blueprint, click and drag it into our scene. I'm going to make sure that I try to line mine up here with the ball that falls down. You'll want to put yours inside of the bucket where your ball ends up, but I haven't set that up, so I'm just going to put it at the base here. And when you hit play, when that ball enters that collision box, we should see that particle effect spawn. And so that was a fun kind of extension there. All right, our extension activity. We have a few things that you can do to extend your learning in this section. And so they have a few challenges here. Get your ball to travel across the room into the sink. So we've got a sink behind kind of where this is spawned at. So into the sink. Change the setting of the actor spawner to spawn more than one ball. So finding out how can we change our spawner to change how many things it spawns. And then changing the emitter to spawn meshes instead of sprites. So going back into that confetti Niagara system that we made, how can we change this from sprite rendering to mesh renders? And so those are the 3 things that you can do that you can get a screenshot of for your turn in for this assignment. They have a few more kind of resources in here, like this cheat sheet on how to get around the engine. That might be good to follow and pay attention to, but otherwise that is all for lesson 1.